How are you guys doing? Today is Saturday, January 15th, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I am going to review the 2021's NFL season's all NFL players season this year, as the all NFL pro teams, the first and second teams, were named yesterday. So of course with that, I'm going to take this opportunity to go into each player's season just to get a sense of how well these individual players played that landed them on the all pro team roster. And I'm going to do a different one for the Pro Bowl, but for the Pro Bowl, I'm going to do that right before the Pro Bowl is named so that the full Pro Bowl rosters are announced so that I get it right this season. But the 2021 NFL All-Pro teams have been set now that this season has officially come to an end. Taking a look at how these teams, or how these individual players how these teams were set up. First, I'm going to start with the quarterback position. The first team All-NFL quarterback this year was Aaron Rodgers, the GOATed starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. This would go on to be the fourth time that he's made the first team All-Pro in his NFL career, the fifth time that he's made an All-Pro team. And this is also coming off of the fact that he did win the Super Bowl last year and was named the first team all quarterback last year. Taking a look at how he did this season, he would help the Green Bay Packers finish with the number one seed in the NFC. He would end up passing for 4,115 yards, 37 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. On the ground, he would go on to finish with about 101 yards and an additional 3 touchdowns. He would finish with 40 total touchdowns of offense as well as 4,200 yards, and his 4 turnovers are amongst the lowest in the league. I'm surprised that it's not the lowest. And so he would go on to finish as the first team All-NFL quarterback after what would be an amazing season for him. The second team All-Pro would be last year's Super Bowl MVP, Tom Brady, after Tom Brady had yet another amazing season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the defending champs. This would be the third time that Tom Brady has made the third team, or the second team All-Pro. The last time that he made it was in 2016, which was the year where they went to the Super Bowl and then came back from behind the Patriots came back from behind and beat the Atlanta Falcons in the Super Bowl, a Super Bowl I know a little too well. This is the 6th time that he's made an All-Pro team, and taking a look at how Tom Brady fared statistically this season while helping the Tampa Bay Buccaneers finish with the second best record in the NFC, and of course setting them up for a matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles. He will go on to complete 67.5% of his passes as he led the NFL in pass completions, pass attempts, pass yards, and pass touchdowns. He would throw for 5,316 yards, which with the extra game added this season is the most passing yards that Tom Brady has ever thrown in a season, and this is his age 44 season. He would throw for 43 touchdowns, which led the NFL, like I just said. He also had 12 interceptions thrown. He would also go on to run for an additional 81 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had a total of 45 touchdowns on the year, which is the second most amount of touchdowns that he's ever put together in an NFL season. And of course, to end it, going into the playoffs, he was named to the second team All-NFL, which of course is a big honor considering, it's Tom Brady. Taking a look at the players that were named to that were named at running back, the second team is vacant for running back because the running back that was voted unanimously into the position was Jonathan Taylor, the elite young starting running back for the Indianapolis Colts. He's 22 years old at this moment as he turns 23 in a couple of days on the 19th. This will be the very first time that he's been named to an all-NFL team in his NFL career. This is also the very first time he was named a Pro Bowler this year. Jonathan Taylor, in his age 22 season, will go on to help the Colts finish with a solid record as they finished just outside of the playoff picture with a 9-8 record. He would lead the NFL in rushes with rush attempts with 332 rush attempts. He had 1,811 rushing yards on the ground. He had 18 rushing touchdowns through the air. He would finish with 360 yards. He finished with 372 touches, 2,171 yards from scrimmage, which is the very first time in his NFL career that he's led the league in yards from scrimmage, and his 20 total touchdowns are the very first time that he's led the NFL in total touchdowns. So, of course, Jonathan Taylor will go on to have an amazing season, despite the fact that the Colts did not make the playoffs. Now taking a look at the tight end position, the player that was named to the first team was Mark Andrews, the starting tight end for the Baltimore Ravens. This is the very first time that he's been named to an All-Pro first team, to an NFL first team All-Pro. This would be the second time that he was named to a Pro Bowl, despite the fact that the Ravens would finish with an 8-9 record just outside of the playoffs. This year, Mark Andrews would finish with 107 receptions, the first time he crossed the 100 reception mark in his career. He finished with 1,361 receptions, a career high for him by over 500 yards. He finished with 9 receiving touchdowns as well. And like I said, this is the very first time that he was named in his NFL career. The second team All-Pro tight end would be Travis Kelsey, the elite starting tight end and former Super Bowl champion for the Kansas City Chiefs. This is the 6th time that he's been named to an All-NFL team in a row, to an All-Pro team. This is the 3rd time that he's been named to the second team. As he has basically been switching on and off from first team, second team from 2016 to 2021. The last time that he was named to the second team All-Pro was in 2019, which I believe is the year where the Kansas City Chiefs went on to win the Super Bowl. So, of course, congratulations to Travis Kelsey. Taking a look at what he did statistically this season for a Kansas City Chiefs team that would finish with the second seed in the AFC. He would go on to finish with 92 receptions, which is the 4th season in a row he's finished with at least 90 receptions in his career. He finished with 1,125 yards. This is the 6th season in a row he's had at least 1,000 receiving yards at the tight end position. His 9 touchdowns are the 3rd most amount of touchdowns he would put together in a season, and he also had a rushing touchdown, so he would have 10 total touchdowns from scrimmage. This would be the 3rd season in his NFL career he finished with a double-digit amount of touchdowns from scrimmage as he prepares to help the Chiefs take on the Pittsburgh Steelers coming up tomorrow. So that is what the tight end position is looking like. Now taking a look at the wide receiver positions, there were 2 wide receivers who were unanimously named to this team. Starting off with Devonta Adams, the elite starting wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. This is the 2nd time that he's been named to the first team All-Pro, as he was named in 2020 as well. This is the 5th year in a row that he's been named to the Pro Bowl, as he helped the Green Bay Packers finish with the best record in the NFC. This season, Devonta Adams would go on to finish with 123 receptions. With this was the second time that he's played 16 games. 3rd time he's played 16 games in a season. His 123 receptions are the most that he's ever put together in a season. His 1,553 receiving yards are a career high for him as well. He would finish with 11 receiving touchdowns, which is 7 less than the previous season. But regardless, he was unanimously voted to the first team All-Pro this year. And then sitting alongside Devonta Adams is Cooper Kupp, sitting here for the very first time as an elite wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams. This is also the very first season that he was named to the Pro Bowl, as he would go on to have a breakout year for all wide receivers everywhere. He would lead the NFL in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. He finished with 145 receiving yards, which is 51 more receiving yards than his previous, or 51 more receptions than his previous career high. He would finish with 1,947, which was almost 800 receiving yards more than his previous career high. He would finish with 16 receiving touchdowns, which is 6 more than his previous career high, and the 2nd time he would ever finish with at least double-digit receiving touchdowns and at least 1,000 receiving yards in a season, as he helped the Los Angeles Rams finish with the 4th seed in the NFC, finishing with the best record in the NFC West. Sitting alongside Devonta Adams and Cooper Kupp in the first team for wide receivers is Debo Samuel, the starting wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers out of the University of South Carolina. This is the very first time that he's been named to the first team All-Pro and the very first time that he's been named as a Pro Bowler. He will go on to help the 49ers finish with the 6th seed in the NFC. And this season, starting with what he did as a wide receiver, he finished with 77 receptions for 1,405 receiving yards on the year. He led the NFL in yards per reception, averaging 18.2 yards per reception as he had 6 yards through the air. He also had 365 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground. He would combine for 1,770 total yards from scrimmage and 14 total touchdowns, as he was one of the big reasons that the 49ers made the playoffs in the first place. Of course, this would be the first time that he was named to the first team All-Pro, and it's very impressive that he was named to the first team amongst incredible wide receivers alongside Cooper Kupp and Devonta Adams after such virtuoso seasons, which means that Debo Samuel had a virtuoso season as well. Looking at the All-Pro second team, it was occupied by 2 former LSU wide receivers. And of course, I'm going to start out with the elder, the elite starting wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings, who at this moment is 22. Justin Jefferson would be named to the second team All-Pro for the second consecutive time in his NFL career. So he's 2 for 2 with that, as he was also named to the Pro Bowl for the second time in his career. He would go on to help the Minnesota Vikings finish with a 8-9 record as they finished 1 game outside of the playoff picture. However, looking at how he fared this season, he would finish with 108 receptions for 1,616 yards. He would finish for the second most receiving yards in a Minnesota Vikings season at the wide receiver position, as he had 20 more receptions and 200 more receiving yards in his rookie year, in which he was named to the second team All-Pro. He would finish with 10 receiving touchdowns, which at the moment is now his career high. And he would go on to lead the NFL in total yards per touches, which would end up being the stat that he would lead the NFL in. And then sitting alongside him at second team was the elite starting wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals, who played with him, and Joe Burrow, for the national championship winning LSU Tigers. That is Jamar Chase. The 21-year-old wide receiver was named to the second team All-Pro this year for the very first time in his NFL career. This is also the first time he's been named to a Pro Bowl, this being his rookie season in the NFL. This season, he would help the Cincinnati Bengals finish with the 4th seed in the AFC as they won the AFC North. And the season, he would finish with 81 receptions for 1,455 receiving yards. He had 13 receiving touchdowns, as well as he would finish amongst the top wide receivers in every single one of those categories. So that would be the wide receiver position. Now taking a look to finish out the offense, looking at the offensive linemen that, of course, were named this season. Starting off at the left tackle position, the first team All-Pro was given to Trent Williams, the starting left tackle for the San Francisco 49ers, who are now sitting with the 6th seed in the NFC West as they finish with the third best record in their third best record in their division. This will be the second time that he's made an All-Pro team. He made the second team All-Pro in 2015. This is the very first time that he's made the first team All-Pro. He would also be named a Pro Bowler for the 9th time in his NFL career this year as well, as he was also named one in 2020. He's been named a Pro Bowler every year since 2012, except for 2019, just to get a sense for how consistent of a beast Trent Williams has been. Looking at the second team left tackle, the award was given to Rashaan Slater. Rashaan Slater would be named after his age 22 season with the Los Angeles Chargers this season. After being named a Pro Bowler for the very first time in his NFL career, he, of course, would be named to the second team All-Pro. And he was a rookie this season after being the 13th pick out of this most recent draft out of Northwestern. As the Los Angeles Chargers finished the season with a 9-8 record, they would get knocked out. They would finish just half a game below the 7th seed Pittsburgh Steelers, who would get knocked out of the play, or who just snuck into the playoffs because they had a tie with the Detroit Lions. So those would be the 2 players that were named at the left tackle position. Looking at the players that would be named at the right tackle position, starting off with the right guard out of Tampa Bay, Tristan Wirfs out of Iowa. Their 22-year-old guard would be named to the first-team All-Pro for the very first time in his NFL career. He was also named to the Pro Bowl for the very first time in his NFL career as well, as he will go on to help the Tampa Bay Buccaneers finish with the second-best record and help Tom Brady lead the NFL in passing yards and passing touchdowns. And then taking a look at the player that was named to the second-team all-right tackle, it would be Lane Johnson, the right tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles would go on to finish this season with the seventh-best record in the NFC, as they just snuck into the playoffs. This would be the very first time that he would be named to the second-team All-Pro. He was named to the first-team All-Pro in 2017. This would be the second time in his NFL career that he's been named to an All-Pro team. So those would be the two players that were named at the right tackle position. Taking a look, of course, at the players that were named at left guard. Starting off in Cleveland, the left guard was Joel Bitonio. Joel Bitonio would go on to be named to his very first team selection after he was named to the second team All-Pro the previous 3 years. He's been named to an All-Pro team. He's been either the best or second best left guard in the NFL for the last 4 years. And of course, he is in the midst of his age 30 season, as he helped the Cleveland Browns finish their season with a 8-9 record, as they tried their best to make it to the playoffs. They were a couple of games out, and they were fighting until the very end, and Joel Bitonio was a big part of that reason. The second team left guard was given to Quentin Nelson of the Indianapolis Colts. And the Indianapolis Colts would finish this season with a 9-8 record, just half a game outside of the playoff picture. The 25-year-old left guard out of Notre Dame would be named to the second team All-Pro for the very first time in his NFL career. He was named to the first team All-Pro the 3 years prior to that, as he was the one that was competing with Joel Bitonio for the best player in the position. This time, Joel Bitonio would actually get the better of him, as Quentin Nelson was also named to the Pro Bowl for the fourth consecutive year. Taking a look at the players that were named at right guard, the first team was given to Zach Martin, the starting right guard for the Dallas Cowboys, who are now sitting with the 3 seed in the NFC East. At the moment, Zach Martin was named to the first team All-Pro for the 5th time in his NFL career. This is the 7th time that he's made an All-NFL team. He's made an All-NFL team in 7 of the last 8 seasons, as the 1 year he didn't since 2014 was 2020, just to get a sense of how consistent he's been. This would also be the 7th time that he's made the Pro Bowl, as 2020 was the year since 2014 in which he didn't make the Pro Bowl as well, just to get a sense for how well Zach Martin has been playing. The second team player at right tackle or at right guard was Wyatt Teller, another offensive lineman from the Cleveland Browns. Wyatt Teller, in the midst of his age 20 season, would help the Cleveland Browns finish with an 8-9 record, as they finished just outside of the playoff picture. This would be the second year in a row that he was named to the second team All-Pro at the right guard position, proving that he's been doing what he's been asked to do. Taking a look at the players named at the center position, the first team center was Jason Kelsey for the Philadelphia Eagles, who helped them finish with a 9-8 record as they just squeaked into the playoffs. And in his age 34 season, Jason Kelsey would be named to the All-NFL first team for the 4th time in his NFL career. For the 4th time in his last 5 seasons. This would be the 5th time that he was named to a Pro Bowl this season as well, as he was named this would be the 3rd season in a row he was named. And just to get a sense of where he is going to be playing, he's going to be facing off against facing off against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense in his very next NFL game. The second team All-Pro center was Corey Linsley of the Los Angeles Chargers. Corey Linsley, who is currently in the midst of his age 30 season, will go on to be named to the second team for the first time in his career. This is the second straight season that he was named to an All-NFL team, as he was named to the first team last year, just to get a sense of how consistent that he's been, to make it to either be named the best or the second best center in the NFL for 2 consecutive years is an incredible feat. So those are the players that were named on offense. Looking at the players that were named on defense, starting, of course, with the edge rushers, starting with the player who would tie Michael Strahan's single-season record in sacks. The first team NFL All-Pro was given to T.J. Watt, as he was one of the 5 players who was selected unanimously to this position. This would be the 3rd consecutive year that he was named to the first team All-Pro at the position. This is the 4th season in a row that he's been named the Pro Bowler, and it's very likely that he may be named the Defensive Player of the Year, but of course it hasn't been named yet. Just to get a sense of how dominant T.J. Watt's season was. He would go on to help the Pittsburgh Steelers just sneak into the playoffs with the 7th seed. He would go on to lead the NFL in sacks for the second year in a row with 22.5, eclipsing his 15 sacks that he did last year by 7.5. Of course, that's quick maths. He would finish with 21 tackles for loss, which led the league in tackles for loss for the second year in a row. He would go on to finish with 64 tackles on the year. He would finish with 5 forced fumbles, which is the 3rd most amount of forced fumbles he's had in a season. And 5 forced fumbles is a lot of forced fumbles. He finished with 3 fumble recoveries on the year, which is the 2nd most he's put together in a season. And at the same time, he's still competing, as his very next game will be against the Kansas City Chiefs. So I know he's definitely giving Patrick Mahomes a little less sleep at night. Sitting alongside him on the first team All-Pro, coming out of the same division, was Myles Garrett, the former 1st overall pick and the elite defensive end who plays for the Cleveland Browns. With this selection, this would be the 2nd straight year that Myles Garrett was named to the first team All-Pro alongside T.J. Watt. This is the 3rd time that he's been named to an All-Pro team, as he made the 2nd team All-Pro back in 2018. This would also be the 3rd year in a 4-year stretch in which he has made the Pro Bowl this year as well, as he helped the Cleveland Browns finish with an 8-9 record as they finished just outside of the playoff picture. He would go on to start all 17 games for them, as he finished with 16 sacks. He would finish with 17 tackles for losses. He had 51 total tackles on the year. He would force a fumble and recover a fumble, as his fumble recovery did result in a fumble recovery touchdown as well. And sitting alongside both of them, those are the 2 players that were named to the first team All-Pro for the 2nd consecutive year. Looking at the 2 players that are sitting across from each other on the second team All-Defense, starting of course with the Chicago Bears, their defensive end Robert Quinn would go on to have an amazing season. In his age 31 season, he would go on to be named to the second team All-Pro for the very first time in his NFL career, as he made the Pro Bowl for the 3rd time in his NFL career. The last time he made the Pro Bowl was 2014, back when the Rams were in St. Louis. And he would go on, and the last time that he made an All-Pro team was 2013. Taking a look at what he did for a Chicago Bears team that would finish just outside of the playoff picture with a 6-11 record. He would go on to finish with 18.5 sacks on the year, which was 4 less than T.J. Watt had for the lead. He would finish with 49 tackles on the year, as he had 17 tackles for loss. He would go on to force 4 fumbles as well. Sitting alongside him on the second team at edge rusher was Max Crosby for the Las Vegas Raiders, who are competing in the playoffs tonight as they face off against the Cincinnati Bengals. In his age 24 season, Max Crosby was named to the second team All-Pro for the very first time in his NFL career, as he was also named to the Pro Bowl for the very first time in his NFL career as well, as he helped the Las Vegas Raiders finish with a 10-7 record. Taking a look at what he did this season, he would go on to start all 17 games, as he would go on to finish with 8 sacks on the year. He had 13 tackles for losses. He had 56 total tackles. As, like I said, he helped the Vegas Raiders make it into the playoffs. He would be one of their vital players this season. Taking a look at the interior linemen who were named, looking at another player who was named unanimously, the Los Angeles Rams or goated starting defensive tackle Aaron Donald in his age 30 season will be named to the first team All-Pro for the 7th consecutive season. He was also named to the first team, or he was also named a Pro Bowler for the 8th consecutive season. 7 consecutive seasons being since 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. He was named to the first team All-Pro. He was either the best or the second best defensive tackle in all of football, as he helped the LA Rams win the NFC West. He would go on to he finished starting all 17 games this season. He would finish with 84 combined tackles on the season, which is by far the most tackles he put together in a season. 15 more tackles than the first season that he made the first team All-Defense, back when the Rams played in St. Louis. He would go on to finish with 19 tackles for loss. And I already mentioned that he had 12 and a half sacks. This would be the 4th season in a row that he's posted at least 12 and a half sacks. The 5th season in a row and 6th out of 7 in which he's posted double-digit sacks as a defensive lineman. He will go on to force 4 fumbles as well, which is tied for the second most amount of fumbles he's done. And for the 4th time in the last 5 seasons, he's finished with at least 4 forced fumbles on the year, just to get a sense of how disruptive and how dominant he's been at the defensive tackle position. Sitting alongside him on the first team was Cameron Hayward, the elite starting defensive tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who just snuck into the playoffs with a 9-7-1 record thanks to their tie. In his age 32 season, he will be named to the first team All-Pro for the 3rd time in his NFL career. This will be the 3rd consecutive year that he's made an All-Pro team, as last year he made the 2nd team All-Pro. This is the 5th consecutive year that he's made the Pro Bowl, just to get a sense of how dominant that he's been at this position. Taking a look at how he fared for the Steelers that made the playoffs and are set to face off against the Kansas City Chiefs. He would go on to finish with 89 total tackles on the year. He finished with 10 sacks. This would be the second time in his NFL career in which he would finish with a double-digit amount of sacks. The last time he did so was 2017. He will go on to defend 9 passes, as he also forced a fumble and recovered a fumble as well. Taking a look at the players that were named to the second team All-Defense on the interior linemen, starting off with Kansas City's elite defensive lineman Chris Jones, helping the Kansas City Chiefs finish with the second best record in the AFC. In his age 27 season, Chris Jones was named to the second team All-Pro for the 3rd time in his NFL career. He was also named to the Pro Bowl for the 3rd time in his NFL career as well, or 3rd time in a row this year. As this season, like I said, he would help the Kansas City Chiefs finish with the best record in their division. And in the 14 games that he started in, he finished with 27 combined tackles with 8 tackles for loss. He had 9 sacks at the defensive tackle position, as he forced a fumble and also recovered a fumble as well. Sitting alongside him and on the second team was Jeffrey Simmons, the defensive tackle for the Tennessee Titans. In his age 24 season out of Mississippi State, this will be the very first time that he's made the second team All-Pro. Despite the fact that he did not make the Pro Bowl this season, he would go on to help the Tennessee Titans finish with the best record in the AFC, and he would go on to start all 17 games. In those games, he would finish with 54 combined tackles, as he had 12 tackles for loss. He had 8.5 sacks on the year, which is by far the most sacks that he's ever posted in a season, as he would help the Tennessee Titans make the playoffs. He would sit alongside Chris Jones. This would be the very first time that he was recognized as being one of the best 4 defensive tackles, best players at his position in the NFL that's full of defensive tackles. Taking a look now at the first team players that were named at linebacker, starting, of course, with the Indianapolis Colts, elite starting linebacker Darius Leonard out of South Carolina State. In his age 26 season, he was named to the first team All-Pro for the 3rd time at the middle linebacker position in a 4-year stretch, as he made the first team last year. This will be the 3rd year in a row that he's made the Pro Bowl as well. He will go on to help the Colts as best as he could, as the Colts finished with a 9-8 record, finishing just outside of the playoff picture with half a game behind the Pittsburgh Steelers. This season, in his fourth season being in the NFL, being recognized as one of the better linebackers in the league. He will go on to finish with 122 tackles on the season, which is the third most amount of tackles that he's posted in a season to date. He would finish with 4 tackles for loss. He would go on to finish with 8 forced fumbles, which led the NFL for the first time in his NFL career. He will go on to finish with 3 fumble recoveries. He also would finish with 4 interceptions on the year as he helped the Colts finish just outside of the playoff picture. Sitting alongside Darius Leonard was Micah Parsons, the elite rookie defensive lineman out of Penn State, who is playing for the Dallas Cowboys. In his age 22 season, in his rookie season, he would be named to the first team All-Pro for the very first time in his NFL career. And of course, he was named a Pro Bowler for the very first time in his career, this being his rookie season. He will go on to finish with 84 tackles and 13 sacks for a Dallas Cowboys team that would win the NFC East with a 12-5 record. He would also force 3 fumbles as well, as he finished with 20 total tackles for loss. Is just showing how much of a beast he is, especially this early on. Of course, I'm cheering for him, especially being able to produce like this early on. And then sitting alongside Darius Leonard and Micah Parsons was Devondre Campbell, the starting linebacker for the Green Bay Packers, who finished with the best record in the NFC, as they are the lone team with an NFC bye. This being his age 28 season, this would be the very first time he was named to a first-team All-Pro, considering the fact that he still to this date has not been named to a Pro Bowl team. He would finish with 146 tackles on the year and 6 tackles for loss. He would also go on to force 2 tackles. He recovered a fumble as well. He finished with 2 sacks, and he also finished with 2 interceptions, doing the most of what he could, this being his very first season in Green Bay after spending his first 4 seasons in Atlanta and his 5th season in Arizona. So those would be the 3 players that would headline the linebacker position, being Darius Leonard, Micah Parsons, and Devondre Campbell. Looking at this year's second-team linebacker, starting off in New Orleans with Demario Davis. Demario Davis, who would go on to play his age 33 season with a New Orleans Saints team that would finish just outside of the playoff picture, as they finished with a 9-8 record, with the same record as the Philadelphia Eagles. This would be this would be the second year in a row, actually, that Demario Davis would be named to the second-team All-Pro, this would be the 3rd time in a row that he's been named to an All-Pro team at the linebacker position. Despite the fact that the New Orleans Saints would be knocked out of the playoffs, Demario Davis would go on to finish this season with a total of 105 tackles. He would go on to have 3 sacks as well, and he also would finish with 7 passes defended. Sitting alongside him at the second team was Roquan Smith, who would play for a Chicago Bears team that would finish with a 6-11 record. In his age 24 season, Roquan Smith would make the second-team All-Pro for the 2nd consecutive year, this being his 4th season out of Georgia, by the way. In his age 24 season, Roquan Smith would go on to finish with 163 tackles, which is a career high for him. He finished with 12 tackles for loss. He also had 3 sacks. He will go on to log an interception, as he logged his very first pick 6 of his career this year. And even with all that, the Chicago Bears still failed to make the playoffs, but Roquan Smith still proved that he was amongst the best, especially among linebackers. And the only player that I had listed as elite amongst this second-team all-defense at the linebacker position was Bobby Wagner, the elite starting linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks. In his age 31 season, would be named to the second-team All-Pro for the 2nd time in his career after a 5-year stint of being a first-team All-Pro at the position. He's been named an All-Pro for the past 8 seasons, including this one. That's an incredible feat of consistency, as this is also the 8th consecutive Pro Bowl that he's made as well. Just giving you context, the Pro Bowls that he was named to would be immediately after the Super Bowl that he won following the 2013 season. So ever since he's won the Super Bowl, he's made the Pro Bowl, and he's been named to an All-Pro team the next 8 seasons. So those are the players that would be named at linebacker. Looking at the cornerback position, starting off with Dallas's first-team All-Pro corner, Trayvon Diggs in his rookie season would be, or I guess in his second season out of Alabama, would be named to the first team All-Pro for the first time after being the NFL interceptions leader and helping the Dallas Cowboys finish with the third best record in the NFC. This would be the very first season that he was named to the Pro Bowl as well, just to get a sense of how well he played. He did allow the most yards against him as a corner, but at the same time, he would go on to finish with 52 combined tackles on the year. He would defend 21 passes. The first time he's defended at least 20. The second time he's had double digits. And he would go on to lead the league with 11 interceptions. He had 142 return yards, which led the NFL as well. And he would also lead the NFL in pick sixes as he tied for the lead with 2 of them. So he would have, and this all being in his age 23 season, as he is currently, he turns 24 at the beginning of this upcoming season. So it'll be a bit until he turns 24. Sitting alongside him at the first team is the Los Angeles Rams elite corner, Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey, who is currently playing in his age 27 season, currently playing for the Rams, who finished with a 12-5 record, is going to be named to the first team All-Pro for the 3rd time in his NFL career. This is also the 5th year in a row that he's been named a Pro Bowler, and just getting a sense of how well he played for the NFC West Division champs. He would go on to start 16 games. And in these 16 games, he would go on to finish with 77 combined tackles, the most tackles he would finish in a season with. He also finished with a career high in tackles for loss, as he had 9 of them. He would go on to finish with 4 interceptions, which is tied with 2017 for the most interceptions he's had in a season. He would also go on to force and recover a fumble as well, as he would go on to prove that, once again, he is one of the best, if not the best, cornerback in all of football. Looking at the players that made the second team at this position, jumping out to New England, J.C. Jackson would be named to the second team. This, in his age 26 season, J.C. Jackson would be named to the second team All-Pro for the very first time in his NFL career. This would also be the very first season that he was named to the Pro Bowl as well. He would finish with 58 combined tackles on the year. He would lead the NFL in passes defended, as he had 23 of them. He would go on to finish with 8 interceptions, as he had a pick 6 for himself as well. He also forced a fumble, as he helped the New England Patriots finish with the 6th seed in the AFC, as they will compete against the Buffalo Bills tonight, as they are one of the 14 teams still alive for playoff contention. Sitting alongside J.C. Jackson at the corner position was A.J. Terrell, the cornerback out of the Atlanta Falcons. He would go on to do his best, even though the Falcons would finish with a 7-10 record outside of the playoff picture. This being his second season in the league, his age 23 season, this would be the very first time that he was named to the first team All-NFL, or second team All-NFL. In the 16 games he started, he finished with 81 combined tackles, as he had 3 tackles for loss. He would go on to finish with 3 interceptions, as he had 16 passes defended, and he would also finish with a sack as well, as he also forced a fumble. So he, and of course, he would be a lockdown corner and do his best for the Atlanta Falcons in the secondary. Taking a look at the players that were named to the first team at the safety position. Starting off in Tennessee, Kevin Byard would help the Tennessee Titans finish with the first-round bye, as the Tennessee Titans finished with a 12-5 record alongside the Kansas City Chiefs, but they got the tiebreaker. In his age 28 season, Kevin Byard would go on to be named to the first team All-Pro for the second time in his NFL career, as he was also named to the Pro Bowl for the second time. The last time that he made the All-Pro team was the last time that he made the Pro Bowl, which was 2017. In this 2021 season, he would go on to finish with 88 combined tackles, which would go on to be 23 less tackles than he had last year. He would go on to finish with 5 interceptions as he had his lone pick 6 of his NFL career this past season. He would also go on to force 2 fumbles. He would also recover a fumble 30 yards for a touchdown himself, and he also finished with a sack, doing the most to help the Titans finish with the best record in the AFC. Sitting alongside him at the first team and at the safety position was Jordan Poyer, the starting safety for the Buffalo Bills. In his age 30 season, Jordan Poyer would be named to the first team All-Pro for the first time in his NFL career, considering he still has yet to be named to a Pro Bowl in his NFL career. He would help the Buffalo Bills finish with the 3rd best record in the AFC East as they finished with an 11-6 record. They face off against the New England Patriots tonight, so all the luck in the world to Jordan Poyer. In his age 30 season this year, he would finish with 93 combined tackles on the year as he had 3 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. He would force he would go on to defend 9 passes on the year, as he also finished with 5 interceptions, doing the most to help the Buffalo Bills, as the Buffalo Bills became his second home after he was trying to make it work in Cleveland, but the Cleveland would end up shipping him out. Taking a look now at the second team players at the safety position. Starting off in Denver, the player that was named out there was Justin Simmons. Justin Simmons would be named, Justin Simmons first coming out of Boston College, would be named to the second team All-Pro for the second time in his NFL career. The last time he made the second team All-Pro was in 2019. He didn't make the team last year, but he made the Pro Bowl for the lone time in his career. He did not make the Pro Bowl this year. In the 17 games he started, he would go on to finish with 80 combined tackles as he had 4 tackles for loss. He had a sack and a half. He would also defend 12 passes and finish with 5 interceptions as he helped the Denver Broncos the best he could, even though they finished with a 7-10 record outside of the playoff picture. Sitting alongside him, it was actually a tie, as Micah Hyde, Buffalo's other safety, was named to the second team All-Defense. Micah Hyde, in his age 31 season out of the University of Iowa, would be named to the second team All-Pro for the second time in his NFL career, as the last time he made the second team All-Pro was the last time he made the Pro Bowl, which was 2017. In this season, Micah Hyde would go on to finish with 74 total tackles on the season, which was among his best tackling numbers that he's had in his career, the second most that he's ever put together in a season. He would also go on to defend 10 passes, as he would go on to force a fumble. He even recovered 2 fumbles, and he would finish with 5 interceptions. He would also return his lone pick 6 in his NFL career this season as well, as he helped the Buffalo Bills win the AFC East and set them up with a matchup against their division rivals, the New England Patriots, tonight. Taking a look at the player that he tied with, it was Budda Baker, the elite safety for the Arizona Cardinals out of Washington. In his age 26 season, Budda Baker would be named to the second team All-Pro for the first time in his NFL career. He was named to the first team All-Pro last year for the second time in his career. This is the 3rd time he's been named to an All-Pro team. This would also be the 3rd season in a row and the 4th year in a 5-year stretch that he would be named to the Pro Bowl, just to get a sense of how consistent he's been at this position, while helping the Arizona Cardinals finish with an 11-6 record in the top wild card seed in the NFC. He will go on to finish with 98 tackles, 2 sacks, 6 tackles for loss on the tackling side of it. He will go on to recover a fumble as well. He also finished with 3 interceptions as he defended 7 passes through the air, just to get a sense of what he was doing with Arizona there. Those will be the players that were named at least at the safety position. Those are the players at least that comprise of the offense and the defense. Looking at the players that were named in special teams, starting off with plays kicker, the first team place kicker in the NFL was Justin Tucker. The elite starting kicker for the Baltimore Ravens in his age 32 season, will go on to be named to the first team All-Pro for the 5th time in his career, as he was named to an All-Pro team for the seventh year in his career. He's been named for the last 6 seasons to an All-Pro team, as the last time he was named to the first team All-Pro was 2019. He did the best with his leg to help the Ravens, as he would help the Ravens finish with an 8-9 record just outside of the playoff picture. This season, he would go on to make exactly 35 of his 37 field goals. He would go on to lead the league in field goal percentage, as he made 95% of them, the first time that he's ever been able to do so. He also led the league with the longest field goal kick for the first time in his NFL career, and the lone time in his NFL career as well, as he made a 66-yarder, which was, of course, the longest of his career as well. This would be the best statistical season that Justin Tucker has ever put up in a season, in a statistically amazing statistically amazing career as a place kicker. The second team place kicker in the NFL, All-Pro, would be Daniel Carlson out of the Las Vegas Raiders. In his age 26 season, Daniel Carlson would be named to the second team All-Pro for the first time in his NFL career, after he was the NFL scoring leader for the second consecutive year at the position, which is something that, of course, the kickers would naturally chase. This season, he would help the Raiders clinch a playoff spot, the top wild card spot in the AFC, with a 10-7 record. He would finish making 40 out of his 43 attempts, as he led the NFL in makes and attempts this year. He would go on to make 10 of his 11 from within 30. He was 12 for 12 in the 30s, 12 for 13 in the 40s, and 6 for 7 in the 40s, as he made 93% of his kicks, as Daniel Carlson would be named for the very first time in his career, just to get a sense. And looking back at Justin Tucker, going back from each range, Justin Tucker went 7 for 7 inside 30. He went a perfect 9 for 9 inside 40. So he was perfect from inside 40 yards. He was 13 for 15 from in the 40s range, and he was a perfect 6 for 6 from 50. So he only missed his 2 from within the 40s, just to get a sense of how amazing these kickers were this year. Looking at the players that were named as punters, the first team punter was A.J. Cole for the Las Vegas Raiders. In his age 26 season, he would be named to the first team All-NFL, first team All-Pro for the first time in his NFL career, as he was also named to the Pro Bowler for the very first time in his career as well. Taking a look at how well, he performed this season. He would go on to lead the NFL in yards per punt, as he averaged 50 yards per punt this season. Second team All-Pro at the punting position was given to Bryan Anger, who helped the Dallas Cowboys finish with the third best record in the NFC East. Taking a look at how Bryan Anger has been faring, at least up until now, in his age 33 season, Bryan Anger would go on to be named to the Pro Bowl and the second team All-Pro for the very first time in his career this year. So, of course, making history for himself there. At the kick returner position, the first team All-Pro was given to Braxton Barrios, the lone player for the New York Jets, who was named on a team that would finish with a 4-13 record, who right now are looking for top prospects, because that's how well of a draft pick that they landed this season. In his age 26 season, he would be named to the first team All-Pro for the lone time in his NFL career. And not to forget that he was on the Patriots the year that they won, so he is a Super Bowl champion, as well as a first team All-Pro player. The second team kick returner was Andre Roberts for the Los Angeles Chargers. Andre Roberts would help the Los Angeles Chargers do the best they can as they finish right outside of the playoff picture with a 9-8 record. In his age 34 season, he would be named to the second team All-Pro for the second consecutive year, as he would also this is the third time that he's been named to an All-Pro team. He was named to the Pro Bowl the last 3 years, but he wasn't named to the Pro Bowl this year. But that's just how well he's been playing. He was still named to an All-Pro team. Looking at the first team All-NFL punt returner, that would go to Devin Duvernay out of Texas, who went on to play this season with the Baltimore Ravens. In his age 24 season, he would go on to be named to the Pro Bowl and to the first team All-Pro for the very first time in his NFL career, as he did his best to help the Baltimore Ravens, who finished with an 8-9 record, who finished a game and a half outside of the playoff picture, just to get a sense of how close they were. And looking at the second team player at the punt return position, it was given to Jakeem Grant, who would play for a Chicago Bears team who would finish with a 6-11 record. Jakeem Grant would go on to play his age 29 season with the Bears, and in this season, he will be named to the second team All-Pro for the second consecutive year, but this would also be the very first year that Jakeem Grant would make it to the Pro Bowl. And then looking at the special teamers that would be named to the All-Pro team this year, looking at the New England Patriots, Matthew Slater, in his age 36 season, will go on to make the second team All-Pro for the third time in his NFL career, as he made the NFL Pro Bowl for the 11th consecutive year as a special teams player this year. This is the fifth time since 2016 that he's been named to an All-Pro team at the special teams position. Sitting alongside him as a special teamer was Ashton Dulin for the Indianapolis Colts. In Ashton Dulin's age 24 season, this is the very first time that he's been named to the second team All-Pro after he was undrafted out of Malone University, just to get a sense of where he's coming out of. But this is the very first time that he would be named to the All-Pro team. And the first team special teamer for the All-Pro team, especially at this position, was JT Gray, who played for a New Orleans Saints team that just finished right outside of the playoff picture. In his age 25 season out of Mississippi State, he would be named to the first team All-Pro for the second time in his career, as he was named to the Pro Bowl for the first time. He was named to the second team All-Pro in 2019, so this is the second time that he's been named to an All-Pro team. Last but not least, looking at the long snapper position, the first team long snapper was Luke Rose, who played for the Indianapolis Colts, who finished just outside of the playoff picture with a 9-8 record. In his age 29 season, out of William and Mary, he would go on to make his first team All-Pro for the very first time in his career, as he also made his very first Pro Bowl appearance. He made the second team All-Pro last year, just to get a sense of how well he was playing. And then the second team long snapper in the NFL was Josh Harris, who would long snap for an Atlanta Falcons team that would finish just outside of the playoff picture. Josh Harris, in his age 32 season, will go on to be named to the second team All-Pro and the Pro Bowl for the first times in his NFL career. And those are all of the players that have made the All-Pro team. So congratulations to all of them. And they are going to be etched in NFL history. For some of them, it may be their alone time. For some of them, it's their first time. For some of them, it's their last. And for some of them, they're just getting started. Some of them, they are on the end. Some of them, they're just in the middle. But the good thing is the season is over, and they were able to capture the attention of the people that were voting on this list. Congratulations to the players that were recognized as the best in their position, especially in a league where you have hundreds of thousands of grown men fighting for those very few finite spots. Congratulations to all of you. I hope all is well, and I will catch you with another episode of The Elite tomorrow once all of today's exhibitions and matchups are done. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another piece tomorrow. I want to thank the AP website for giving me what I needed for these, just for giving me the list. I want to thank the ESPN and NFL websites as well for giving me what I needed as well. I want to thank everyone for listening. 12:53 minutes. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another piece tomorrow. Peace out.